Okay, thank you. So I realize I'm the last talk that keep you from going for lunch.
Yes, keep it short.
I will keep it short. Okay, but it's 10 years to summarize. So it's about the 10th anniversary of PharoJS. So it's a time to reflect a bit about what we did with my friend Dave, who is there, and discuss potential futures, and hopefully get some feedback from you, some ideas. So I'm Noury. I work at, okay, it's fuzzy, but I work in a university in northern France, near Lille. So, what's the story behind PharoJS? So it started with actually a love story. So it's a love story about, I was involved in a startup, and we were working on a dating app, and I was in charge of the client side of it. So we had to make it on mobile phones, and we had, of course, we want to be available on all platforms, so we had to decide whether we implement it twice. So we implement on Android with Java and Objective-C for iOS. At that time, when we were working, Swift wasn't a thing. It was about to be released. It was some kind of alpha. And I was start investigating how to do this stuff and avoid repeating myself. So what's the intersection at that time? Well, was okay, we can do some web technologies, can do the trick, and we can do the programming with JavaScript. So say, but, okay, we love small talk. We can discuss why we love small talk. There are many reasons, objective reasons why small talk is a compelling language. But this is, I mean, you know the story, unless there are some young folks around. So we start developing in Pharo and generate JavaScript. And this is how PharoJS was born. So then we have to we presented it at the Innovation Awards, and that was the first public demo, 2015. So actually, if you do the math right, I'm cheating. So I'm making myself younger. But it's 11 years old and not 10. And that opportunity, that was like PharoJS was at infancy, and I met Dave, who was interested in the topic. So we joined effort since then. So so I am enjoying all the interaction with Dave through a decade now, and the friendship. So thank you, Dave, for all the ideas and friendship. And there are other people that contribute over the years. So thanks to the various contributions. And so where did we use PharoJS? So there is a page, there is a PharoJS.org website where it presents PharoJS, gives some success stories. So you go there, you can enjoy some live demos. So you see how PharoJS allow reusing or leveraging existing libraries. There is Matter.js for a physics engine. There is D3JS for data visualization. So it can do some quite heavy lifting for displaying data. There are various kinds of visualization with D3, and we can even start experimenting with 3D or with 3JS 3D visualizations. And like you can have complex scenes, and all within the browser, and at like it's quite responsive to do things. But this was all in the web browser. So, but PharoJS can target whatever JavaScript platform you have. So, of course, we had the first early experiments with mobiles, but we had some other stuff, and we had some stuff on Node.js. And there is a dedicated page for this. Give some snapshots from what's there. There are some, okay, barely unclear, but you can read more or less some mobile apps. We had some mobile app that went to the store and deployed, and they were working when we were using the features. What is interesting is to be connected to the device features. This is why we wanted to have some kind of rich client. And they were COVID, and they've made this app, so a web app where which collects the data from the Johns Hopkins University Medical School and displays for the stats for various countries, and so can see how things evolving, so get some objective information about how things were evolving at that time. And okay, not only the two of us were using it, there is ActiveGrid, which is, by the way, for those who submitted the project to the awards, ActiveGrid is kindly hosting us for the form, so this is how you fill the submissions. So it's nice, and I think Norbert, you can talk to Norbert to see how he used it, PharoJS. I tried it also for another business, which was for educational purposes. We had the platform for teaching factory automation. So on that side, what you see, the lines, it's actually a graphical editor, a graphical programming language for it's called ladder diagrams for programming for factory automation. It's taught in universities. And in the middle, you have a simulator with physics engine. Remember, earlier I talked about we link to Matter.js, which is a physics engine. This is what we are using behind. So it's kind of gamification of the simulation, so students can interact with it and do some nice stuff. And it was used by a bunch of universities. So now we have the overview where it can be used. What's actually PharoJS? Of course, you know that we start from Pharo and we generate JavaScript. And but what behind it's two big blocks. There is a transpiler and a set of tools. And the transpiler, it's the whole thing is actually multiple smaller sub-projects that are linked together. We'll go over some of them in the following slides and discuss them. So the converter, it's actually, this is what we think of basically when you talk about the transpilation. If you take the Smalltalk code and you generate, you take a valid Smalltalk code and you generate a valid JavaScript code that is semantically equivalent. That means it does exactly or hopefully what is done by the Smalltalk code, but in the JavaScript context. This means that we need to map all the constructs from one language to the other. So for instance, JavaScript does not have nil, it does not understand. It does not have non-local returns for blocks, so we have to deal with this kind of things. So the list is long. We have a paper from last year, from IWST last year with Dave, where we went over all the challenges to map the languages. So there are quite a bunch of them, and it can be tricky. So we are far from covering the full language for Smalltalk. So Smalltalk is, it fits in a postcard. But actually, it's kind of complex to implement if you wanted to get it right, and especially to map it to a weaker language. So no JavaScript fans around. We had to. We can decide what to do with when you transpile. You can selectively transpile. You don't want to transpile the whole image. You want to say, okay, we want to transpile only some methods, skip some other methods. And there is something called placeholder for some classes, which is like a representative from what's in the JavaScript world. But maybe I will come back to this later in a different slide. This. Blending the two languages, because we want to, when we develop, we want to have the full Smalltalk experience. But we want to reuse JavaScript. We want to use, for instance, when you are developing for web, you have the DOM. You need to reference the DOM in your Smalltalk code. You have third-party library. You need to reference it into your code. So this means that whatever you have in JavaScript should appear in Smalltalk, but we don't want to change the developer experience. As a Smalltalker, we need to think like everything is subclass of objects. All methods from object apply to whatever object you have, even if it comes from JavaScript. If you have arrays from JavaScript, you need to have the index starting from 1 and not 0, actually, when you are coding in Smalltalk. But when you transpile to JavaScript, your Smalltalk objects will behave like JavaScript objects. So it's actually blending the two languages together. There are plenty of aspects of the languages that doesn't match, they don't align, so we had to align them. So for instance, JavaScript they have weak encapsulation. Basically, you take whatever object you access instance variables, and this kind of things we don't have in Smalltalk. So how do you do this when you are calling a JavaScript library and it gives you an object, basically a structure, and you need to go into properties? So we had to generate accessors on the fly, this kind of things. And we want, for instance, okay, we take a JavaScript framework and we want to extend it in Smalltalk. So how do you define a subclass, a Smalltalk subclass of a JavaScript class you don't have in your image? And this is why we introduced the concept of placeholder I was mentioning earlier. So basically we say, okay, I create an empty class. It's kind of a shell, empty shell that says, okay, this one corresponds to some JavaScript class, and I can subclass it and work on it. And when I do my tests and everything, things should work correctly. And we can, part of the blending, say, okay, whenever we have, for instance, I have the array from JavaScript, they should, or whatever collection from JavaScript, I should, for instance, be able to do a do or a collect or inject into for the Smalltalk API. So we need to extend JavaScript classes with some stuff. This is what it's all about. And even the kernels of the languages are different. So for instance, in Smalltalk we have the parallel inheritance class meta class inheritance, which is not always respected in JavaScript. And this is so a shameless plug for my IWC talk tomorrow. So we can discuss it tomorrow. So we can go on. And then we can export from Pharo to JavaScript. And basically we need to strip down the image. We don't take the full image. And we start from one entry point. Basically, you define your entry point. This is my library. This is my class. And transitively navigate the graph of classes and get whatever class you reference. You can adapt them. You can say, I don't want these methods, or I know these extra ones. And then it generates a standalone JS Apple library. And if you are using Node, you can say, I'm depending on this third-party JavaScript library, and it's behind the scene. It goes, fetches from npm packages, install them for you, and you can do you simply say, I require, basically you import the library, I require it, and it does the thing for you. There are inspectors and playgrounds because like we want to do the full Smalltalk experience, even like we are using experience with code that JavaScript code. So you are playing with inside the image, and it talks to the JavaScript interpreter behind the scene, so allows live interactions, test-driven development. And this means that like we need to serialize both ways. We need to send Smalltalk object to JavaScript and get back JavaScript objects and to Smalltalk. So we can have like proxies on JS objects and callbacks from Smalltalk, but I won't discuss this further. And for this interactivity, we need to have basically when we are developing, there is Pharo and JavaScript running side by side, and they are talking via middleware. Actually, what's behind the scene, it's a WebSocket. So when we run our integration test, we have basically the DOM and the third-party JavaScript libraries or objects from libraries running on the JS interpreter, and all our code is running on the Pharo image. And they are talking to each other, and we do all the assert, and we ensure that the integration works well. Then we do the portability test. And here, the tests still run in Pharo, so we have the test runner in Pharo, and it talks to everything else. So meaning that before running the tests, we have all the extension of SUnit that export to JavaScript all your Smalltalk code and so on. So finally, what we do with this, where we go from here. So then we have a kind of informal to-do list, or starting with a bold goal, ambitious goal, which is we want to be able to transpile the full image. Transpiling the full image meaning dealing with complete Smalltalk semantics. And of course, we need to do it in an optimized way, because it doesn't make sense to reconstruct VM in JavaScript regarding our goals. So this is ambitious. There is quite some work to do, and there are plenty of challenges. And I'm happy to discuss them later on a break. We want to continue with improving the user experience. So we want a debugger to be able to step into either generated JS code, or why not third-party JS code that we are calling. So this means that we need to have like a different model for navigating JavaScript. Last year, we had a Show Us Your project, so we spent the part of our last ESAG with Dave coding, and we had Show Us project, the final session, showing that we could step into the generated JavaScript code, or actually it was a handwritten JavaScript, but it was quite generic. So it's kind of, we have find a first step for a solution. So it becomes to be, or we expect to be doable. And we, and part of the improvement we want to have is middleware. So currently we have Pharo and image and JavaScript, they work side by side and they interact while we are developing. So typically we are running the tests, we are playing in the playground, and they talk to each other. But in production, JavaScript is standalone. So we cut the cord with the image, and we generate export JavaScript, and it lives its life alone. But we want to be able to have the interaction with the Smalltalk image during production. We did in the past some experiments with integrating with Seaside, so we have a proof of concept from this regard, but we want more, and this is again another plug, my other talk in this main track tomorrow. So, but JavaScript is fine, but it's not. This is not enough. So basically, what we are doing, we take Pharo, with PharoJS, we generate JavaScript. But the web apps are more than JavaScript. This is why we start experimenting with something else, and I made some talks in the past on this called WebST. Basically, we took PharoJS and the HTML generator of Seaside, so it was more the static part, and we built WebST, which basically allows to build web components, meaning reusable pieces that are bricks that contain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we can reuse them in different contexts, and we can also obviously assemble web components, either ones that we build or third-party ones, and combine them and build some apps. So this is a path we will continue to work on. And beyond PharoJS, there is the whole Smalltalk web initiative that involved some. We presented it with Eric and Richard and Dave last year. So we want to unite the Smalltalk ecosystem for web development, share libraries, tools, sub-projects, and this hopefully across Smalltalk dialect. Of course, we cannot do all of it by ourselves, so any help is welcome. And okay, to echo James' talk this morning, so we want to go beyond JavaScript. So why not leveraging popular languages? So targets a wider scope. So with Dave, we started analyzing the landscape, and we took the plrank.com website and lists have some reasonable ways of ranking the languages, and the top dynamic languages are, I mean, top across all languages anyway, and the dynamic ones are JavaScript and Python in this order. So JavaScript we are already starting addressing, and Python is like seems to be like the next interesting target to look at. So and the overall idea, or I would say the philosophy behind PharoJS, I mean, we want to broaden it to anything like X. So we want any technology to take it and control it from Smalltalk and reuse it, leverage it to make software. Or the other way around, make other technologies depend on Smalltalk. So we build with Smalltalk, we build some libraries, some tools that hopefully others will use. So we have this, make a Smalltalk like a central piece to other people outside our community. So that's it.